An Auckland bus driver was left in a critical condition after he was violently attacked while working.
Bus drivers are calling for urgent and immediate intervention after one of their own was stabbed.
A stabbing attack on a bus driver in Auckland last night has highlighted the need for better security, including cameras and driver cages.
Now, Auckland bus drivers are asking their union for a stop work meeting to discuss what's being done to stop passengers assaulting them.
Spat at, berated, kicked, punched, stabbed in the ribs. Auckland bus drivers are heading to work fearing for their lives.
Driver Rajneesh Trihan was punched in the face by a passenger yesterday morning after a dispute over a fare.
And according to Auckland Transport, this is no longer the occasional incident. Kia ora, I'm Davina Zimmer, and on The Detail today, Auckland Transport data shows drivers have been physically assaulted 33 times in the first 6 months of the year. That's risen from 21 at this time last year. For the same period, 48 cases of verbal abuse were reported, including 5 incidents of threats to harm or kill and 1 incident where a weapon was on display. So just how bad are things on public transport? Why are drivers facing so much of this abuse?
The drivers are obviously isolated. They don't have the safety of a train carriage or a cabin like the ferry crews do.
And what's being done to ensure our bus drivers not only are safe, but feel safe while on the job?
I mean, you would have seen a lot of media in relation to police getting back to the basics of being in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing.
That's Inspector Dave Glossop. He's the Operational Delivery Manager in Tamaki Makaurau and is tasked with overseeing the deployment of officers into public spaces to respond to crime and also prevent it from happening.
Just about all crime can be contributed to the pain-gain equation. You know, what am I going to get out of it and what's my chances of getting away with it?
Are there any other reasons as to what's motivating these attacks?
Oh, look, I wish I knew. I mean, every single case is very bespoke. I do know that we're dealing with individuals where alcohol may be involved, mental health challenges can be involved. Some of the people that we're dealing with, you know, they've had a bad day and very inappropriately are taking things out on the wrong people. Every case is very unique. There's not any particular motivation, no particular age, race, religion or anything that stands out predominantly in any of this. I know that some of the more recent attacks, there's been racial overtones to them. I'm sort of generalising about assaults that have occurred even for people on buses or people getting onto buses or people getting off buses, not just the drivers. But any crimes that are racially motivated is only something we've been recording for a relatively short time.
Is it fair to say these kinds of incidents are on the rise?
I know anecdotally the reporting of them is on the rise. In its entirety, public place violence, which this becomes part of, which is, is not belittling it in any way at all, is decreasing. But I know that the focus on this is very high. Nobody goes to work to accept being assaulted.
Are these attacks on bus drivers isolated to Auckland, or is it a national issue?
Auckland's a great label that gets in the paper quite regularly. People have to remember, we've got a third of our population here, so they happen everywhere. I do not for 1 minute think it's an Auckland-specific problem, but Auckland makes the headlines because, that's where a majority of the people live.
Bus drivers are an easy target. They drive alone with nothing separating them from passengers. But it's not just them who are facing this kind of abuse. Earlier this year, a train manager was assaulted and left unconscious while working on the Western Rail line in Auckland, leading to a widespread police hunt for the offender.
Ubers, taxis, I think the reporting of it, and this is something that gets trotted out a lot, so I accept that, but I think a lot of things that previously went unreported now is being reported, but also maybe people seem to be striking out metaphorically and literally a lot earlier. People's ability to restrain themselves in these situations is a problem as well. Categorically, as we're dealing with people that are sometimes having the worst day of their lives for a number of reasons. There's a lot of desperate people out there, and it often culminates with criminal behaviour.
But Dave also thinks there is an element of confirmation bias at play. He's noticed unruly behaviour in public spaces, which includes attacks on bus drivers, is getting more media attention.
And of course, it resonates with people. It's exactly the same for people running dairies and those sort of things. Those people come to work, they work hard to make a living. They deserve to be safe. So it's talked about a lot. I know you get it from multiple sources of media, the same story. And that's great, not knocking it in the slightest, but then it gives you the perception that there's a lot more of it.
Gary Froggatt, the president of the Auckland Tramway Union, also agrees that public awareness of these incidents has increased. And technological advances and the rise of social media have played a role in how quickly and widely information spreads.
When I started, we didn't have cell phones, and passengers now are able to take pictures from their phones while they're sitting in the seats. Passengers are very quick to call the police and assist the drivers. In this particular case on Saturday, there was an elderly lady and two youths who stood beside the driver and protected him, which we are very thankful for. This particular driver told the passenger to take a seat. He did take a seat, and as the driver was preparing to pull out into traffic, the passenger came down the aisle and whacked him in the face.
This story didn't seem to come as a surprise to Gary. Maybe that's because he's seen this kind of abuse in the industry for nearly 60 years.
I started in the industry in 1965, and we had some abuse back then. Probably the worst thing that happened, though, was at that time it was 6 o'clock closing of the pubs, and everybody came out of the pubs and onto public transport, and we had to stop people bringing open bottles of beer onto the bus. Assaults, abuse, passengers spitting on the drivers, homeless people riding up and down for free on the link buses. In some cases, it could be mental issues. It's not that common, but unfortunately, the injuries suffered by the drivers when it does happen are getting worse.
Auckland Transport figures show a steady increase in aggressive behaviour towards bus drivers. In 2022, 24 assaults were recorded, as well as more than 50 accounts of verbal abuse. Last year, those figures rose to 51 assaults and more than 120 cases of verbal abuse. Assaults this year are on track to surpass previous figures. I asked Gary why he thinks they're on the rise.
Probably the economic situation that we're going through at the moment. Can't think of any other reason why this is happening. It really started with COVID, I suppose. When COVID came along, they went away from cash. From there, we went into hot cards only. But I don't think it's been an increase because it's the hot cards. I just think it's people taking the opportunity to ride for nothing. I guess it's sometimes the way the driver deals with the situation, and all the drivers are different. And that's why the de-escalation training was introduced, which we support. We think that the drivers are properly trained and instructed. We could eliminate a lot of the problems. And I guess, I repeat what one of my managers said, I'd rather we lose $2 than have the bus driver off on PCC for 3 months. It's just not worth arguing with the passengers when they're in that mood.
AT's Director for Public Transport, Stacey van der Putten, says any assault on a bus driver is one too many, and that de-escalation is one of the best ways to keep staff safe. Here's Gary on what that de-escalation training looks like.
Well, they're trained to be polite to the passengers, good morning and good afternoon, etc. They're taught not to argue with a passenger who wants to argue with them. They're taught not to call passengers back if they haven't paid their fare. Process for that is they punch out a new non-cash ride. That information goes direct back to Auckland Transport, and they can put in a report when they get back to the depot. But the key is don't argue with the passengers.
What do drivers want to happen? What are you hearing from them?
Well, they want assurance that they can come to work and go home in the same condition that they came to work in. And as I said earlier, I think the best idea is to start installing these security screens as fast as possible. Mayor Wayne Brown managed to get $6 million in the last Auckland City Council budget towards that process. I've been dealing with this for some 10 years or so, and we've done nothing but talk. And I think the time has come for some sort of action.
According to Duncan McGrory, the action that Gary and the union are calling for is being taken. He's the Public Transport Service Operation Manager at Auckland Transport, which means he's involved in implementing the tools and strategies that keep drivers safe, including security screens. But he says not everyone's enthusiastic about putting those in.
There's actually quite a lot of drivers who don't want the security screens, and it's not from the security point of view, it's because then they lose that opportunity to interact with their customers. And a lot of the drivers actually work in the community that they live in, and they drive the same bus routes every day. They have kind of personal relationships with the people who get on and off their bus every day. So it's definitely not the option that a lot of them would prefer, but we've just been left with no other option at the moment.
Duncan acknowledges this work has been a long time coming. He says the plan is to have 80% of the bus fleet equipped with screens within the next 2 years.
We're not in the early stage of it. There's quite a lot of mucking around required. All brand new buses have them factory fitted as they come off the line and into service. We have to go through our current fleet, of which there's a few thousand, to retrofit those, which we have all of the operators. So all of our contracts are run by a handful of different operators. They own the buses, so they will purchase buses from different suppliers. So as you can imagine, we can't have a standard screen that fits every bus. We can have an idea of what a screen looks like, and then it's got to obviously be curtailed to meet the different manufacturing standards of each vehicle.
This past Saturday, bus driver Rajneesh Trehan was attacked by a passenger who didn't want to pay the fare. Duncan says he can't confirm a wider link between fare evasion and assaults on drivers, but AT does track the number of people who don't pay. And when it comes down to a passenger not wanting to tap on, AT's stance is that drivers should just let them.
Our bus drivers have a bus driver console. We've actually made some changes to it to make it easier for the bus drivers to be able to record it. So it used to be a 7-touch process to record somebody riding the bus without paying a fare. In the last few months, we've actually had that brought back down to, I think it's 2 touches. So essentially the bus driver just has to hit the screen twice and it will record somebody who's getting on without paying a fare.
Right, so it requires the bus driver paying attention as people hop on, seeing how many people don't tap and do tap.
Yes, we're not saying just let everybody on for free. If they feel it's safe enough, they can question somebody around paying for the fare. We've made some changes, so if we can see that there's an issue in one particular area of the city, we can isolate that and then send our transport officers over there to help out as much as they possibly can.
I mean, are we going a bit around in circles here? You know, bus drivers, they, in some parts, are scared of saying no and, like you say, are instructed to de-escalate the situation and just let people on who don't want to pay. Then the people who get a free ride go tell their mates, and then their mates come and they do it as well, and then it becomes the norm, and then you've got one bus driver who does say no, and then they get attacked for it. How do we break this cycle?
There's no silver bullet answer to that question, unfortunately. It seems to be a bit of a societal thing at the moment, and we're trying to work really hard with the communities because they play a big part in this, in helping to educate people on how they should behave in public and how to treat people with respect who are just delivering a service.
One possible solution, more transport officers.
Auckland Transport is welcoming 9 new transport officers, bolstering numbers across the network as it tries to improve commuter safety. It's been a hot-button issue in the supercity with a number of recent incidents on the network, including a vicious attack on a 16-year-old schoolboy on a bus in July.
I think we have 41 transport officers at the moment in our network. So at any one time, I think there's between 19 and 22 of them who work through the day and the night. They are out there to essentially police around fare evasion, but they're also there to provide support as and when required.
What kind of power do they have?
They are warranted, so they're able to give fines to fare evaders. That's generally won't be the first thing that they will go to. What we do see is a lot of people using hop cards and putting a concession on that card that they're not allowed to have. So the transport officers they do have a magic wand, and they can check what's on the card, see what the card's being used for, check travel history, and sort of work through the excuses that a passenger might have around why they've got the incorrect card. And based on that information, they may give a warning, which they can note in their pads, which goes into our system, or if they want to, they can issue a fine to that person. They can't detain anybody or anything like the police.
When they're out on the job, are they riding on the buses? And if they are, talking to someone, a fare evader, are they doing that on the bus, or do they take them off the bus?
Usually they'll do it on the bus. I've been out with the transport officers a few times, so they generally try to work between the transport hubs. And if they're working at the transport hubs, they will stand at the front of the bus and make sure that people are tagging on and tagging off correctly. If they are in the middle of a trip somewhere where they're getting on, they will then walk through the bus and check everybody's hop cards to check if they've paid. So sometimes it'll be on the bus, sometimes it'll be off the bus.
But Auckland Tramway Union's Gary Froggatt isn't confident these transport officers are as effective as they could be. He wants more of them and for them to patrol more frequently.
They need to be seen on the buses all the time. And the other thing I should mention is that the transport security officers are going around in threes because they've been attacked as well. And the poor old bus driver is all by himself, but the transport officers are in groups of three.
But with a transport network that's running 1.6 million trips every week, Duncan McRory questions how realistic it is to expect each and every one to be patrolled. That's why AT is also looking at other ways to increase security.
We're working through something at the moment where we do have security guards out, not in the network as such. They are based at our hubs. They're there to generally a lot of the people who do cause problems tend to hibernate at some of these areas, and then they will use the buses to move from one facility to another. So the security guys are there as a presence to provide a little bit of security for the drivers to try to stop these people moving from the hub onto the bus. These security personnel at the moment will use the buses to travel between the hubs, but they're not there to ride the bus network at the moment. So we're just working through that at the moment just to see what sort of the success rate we get out of that.
Are there any other security measures currently in place to keep bus drivers safe?
We're working really closely with the police and in the different communities just to try to get some more buy-in from everybody around keeping not just the drivers safe, but the passengers safe at the same time. Yeah, everybody deserves to be able to travel within the network safely as much as the bus drivers do. So lots of work going on in the community with the unions. We're working with the operators as well, getting feedback from the drivers. Like I said, I don't think unfortunately there's a silver bullet that will fix this. We just need to keep evolving and looking at different ways to address it.
Before the COVID pandemic, commuters could use cash to pay a bus fare. That option was removed, mainly to limit social interactions, but also to improve safety for drivers. Now, the only way to pay for a bus ride is by using a hop card. People can buy these cards at a retailer, at a vending machine in one of 3 locations, or by going to the website and getting it delivered in the mail. Over the next few years, Auckland Transport will be getting technology that will let passengers pay for a ride on a bus, train or ferry with Apple and Google Pay, or debit cards and most credit cards, as well as hop cards. This type of payment is already used in major cities overseas. AT wants contactless payment capability for all fares and a national prepaid transit card by 2026. However, the first phase, contactless payment for standard adult fares, will be introduced later this year. While all of these measures, contactless payments, more officers patrolling and safety screens on buses, are there to improve security, Inspector Dave does worry it gives the perception that public transport isn't a safe commuting option.
things happen in trends and peaks, but over its entirety, I don't think that, I would start considering public transport as an unsafe way to travel. And I'm aware that AT are looking at, introducing more measures. I mean, putting CCTV was a great measure, and even retrofitting screens and stuff that's being looked at. I mean, that's all great and it will keep people safe, but the perception of safety then starts to drop as well, because you have to start caging off the driver from the community. That's, a very sad thing to have to do. This is something that we would always focus on. Anything where people are getting injured as a result of coming to work or feel unsafe coming to work. As I say, absolutely nobody in any circumstance should be going to work feeling unsafe. For the New Zealand Police, the challenge is that it always will be a case of being really efficient and effective with our resources. We have to do more of what works and, make sure we don't do stuff that's not actually contributing. And that's where I said, the balance around visibility, a huge priority for the police, but we've got to do it efficiently and effectively.
That's all for today. Thank you to Gary Froggatt, Duncan McCrory and Inspector Dave Glossop. The Detail is a newsroom production supported by RNZ and NZ On Air. This episode was engineered by William Saunders and produced by Gwen McClure. I'm Davina Zimmer, Mā te wā.